Hi, it's Yay for Yarn, and this is a DIY tutorial on how to yarn bomb your flip-flops. I have 3 different versions to show you. A Patriotic flip-flop, a Colorblock flip-flop, and a striped flip-flop. So let's get started. For these projects you will need a pair of flip-flops. I got some of these at the dollar store and I got some of these at Walmart, but wherever you get them they're usually $1. These are like the cheapest foam kind that you can get. And you will also need a package of bonbons and a small pair of scissors to trim the ends, and you'll also need a yarn needle to finish them off at the end. I'm going to start with these blue flip-flops, and I'm going to use the red and the white yarn with these. By the way, the colorway of my bonbons, my set, is called Beach. These are number 2 in thickness. These are not quite sport weight. They're a little thinner than sport weight, but not as thin as fingering. And I'm going to use these to wrap the straps of the flip-flop and make a red, white, and blue kind of American flag themed design with these. So first of all, you're going to need to find the end of your bonbon. And I actually like the center pull end, but this is so tiny I don't think I can find it. So I'm going to unwrap from the outside. And we're going to start down here at the one end of the strap. And this has like a little plug at the other side to keep it from sliding up through the top. And we're going to try to wrap over the ends of the yarn as we work. To start out, I'm going to take the tail of the red, and I'm going to actually start with the red on the inside and the white on the outside, just to start. It's not going to stay that way for long. But you also want to take note that the side of the strap that's facing up, back here at the beginning of the strap, is going to rotate and be on the underside when you get towards the front. So the side that you're focusing on is this side right here. This is the outside, the visible part. So I'm going to take the red tail and kind of wedge it up underneath the end of that strap right there. Give a little slack at the end. And then I'm going to take the white tail and do the same going in the other direction. Just like that. And then you're going to take your tails and you're going to hold them over the back of the strap so that when you wrap the strap of the flip-flop that you're encasing those tails and you don't have to weave them in later. So what we're going to be doing is crossing and twisting and wrapping behind the strap. So for this design, we're going to have a little bit of white on this side, a little bit of red, and then we're going to switch and do the opposite. And if you'd like, you can even tie the tails together in a double knot to make sure that they stay put, and you can pull tighter and you don't have to be so careful with the balls. So we're going to cross them over like so, bring them to the back. Now all of the stitches that we make are only going to be on the back, which is actually the outside. So I'm going to have the yarns crossed, bring them to the back, and what you can do is you can leave one ball stationary, take the other ball behind the strap, go over and then under the strand of yarn that's in the back, and back to the other side. And that makes your stitch. And then you're going to pull on that and tighten it. And it's not real easy to at this point, but if you can, turn it over a little bit and make sure that your stitch is centered on the right side of the strap. Now I'm going to cross them again, reverse the colors, make sure you're stitching over the top of your tail, and then I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to take the one in my left hand, go behind the strap, over and then under the other yarn to make my stitch, and then back behind to where it was before. And then make sure I tighten it and try to center it on the front of the strap and scoot it down really close to the stitch before. And you always want to check to make sure that each stitch is centered on the outside. When you get to the place where your strap turns around and you can see the front of it, then you can do a little bit different method of making the stitches. It's the same concept, you're doing the exact same thing, but just from a different direction. I have just reversed these two balls. I have taken the red one from this side, put it on that side, and the white one, and put it behind the strap on that side. And so to make the stitch from the front, I like to take a loop, bring a loop of yarn over like that, and then pick up the ball of red yarn and pull it through the loop, and then pull the white yarn back. And you can see the stitch that we're making and what it looks like. And as always, scoot it down, and before you make the next stitch, reverse the balls behind the strap. And I've almost covered up my tails. So I'm going to keep doing these same stitches until I get up to where the rubber goes between your toes, and then we're going to split and go around to that little part right there. Alright, now I have gotten to the little rubber part that goes between your toes, and so now we have to skip from this to that in one stitch. So what we're going to do, I've already reversed my balls of yarn behind the strap. I'm going to take the white, go behind the red, around it, and you know how we usually do. And then instead of going under the strap that we were working on the first half, now we're going to go and reverse the balls behind the second half of the strap. And we're going to keep making stitches across this strap, and then when we get to the end, then I will show you how to end it off. Okay, so I have worked my way around the second half of the strap, and I have wedged the tails of the last stitch into the little space where the strap goes into the foam. And I cut the tails, and I'm going to tie them in a double knot. And I'm going to take both of them individually, but both of them, and I'm going to take a metal yarn needle, and I'm going to thread my yarn needle up through all of these tight wraps of yarn. And this is going to take a minute because they're pretty tight, and I want them tight so that they don't wiggle when you're wearing them, but you don't want them to be impossible to fix your tails either. But mine are pretty tight. So I'm going to have to shove it a little bit. And I'm going to take both of them, both of the tails, and try to thread it through the needle. And now I'm going to take the needle and pull it out through. Pull on the tails to tighten, make sure that the knot gets tucked under some of the wraps. And then I'm going to take the little tails and cut them, just like that. For this design, I'm going to use a pink flip-flop with the purple and green bonbons, and this is going to be pretty similar to the first one we did. I'm going to take both yarns and wedge the tails up underneath the strap here at the beginning, and I'm going to tie them in a double knot. And for this one, we're not going to be reversing the balls. We're going to keep them on the side that they are, and that really does make it a lot easier and a lot less steps you have to do to make your stitches. So to make each stitch, I'm going to start out by bringing the yarn, the green yarn, to the left, pulling the purple yarn up through the loop, and then pulling the green yarn back. And you always make sure that your little tail is sticking up so it gets caught in the stitches. And for this one, we're actually making the twists on both sides. Instead of reversing this ball with this ball, we're making a twist on the back. So this is going to work the same way whether you're on the back of the strap or the front of the strap. Now I'm going to take the same green strand, bring it behind the strap and then pull the purple yarn up through the loop and then tighten the stitch like that on the back. And you always want to check and make sure that it is centered on the back of your strap. But for this first one, it is wedged down in there so tightly that you really can't see it, so it doesn't really matter very much. So again, I'm going to take the green strand of yarn and pull the purple ball through it, tighten my stitch, and then I'm going to take the green strand back behind the strap, pull the purple through it again, and tighten the other stitch, the second stitch, and center it, make sure that it lines up. So I've finished my stitches all the way down to the end of the strap, and I have them wedged in there, shoved stitches, as many as I can get, down in this little space where it's pressed up against the foam. And you'll notice that my stitches on the back side do not line up, and that really doesn't matter as long as they line up on the outside where you're going to see it. The inside doesn't really matter. So I've cut my tails, and now I'm going to tie them in a double knot and weave them in as I did before. For this green flip-flop, I'm going to use the light blue, the orange, and the red together. And I'm going to do a blanket stitch around the strap this time. And if you've ever done a blanket stitch before with a needle and thread, then this should be pretty easy for you. If not, it's still very, very easy to learn. So I'm going to pick a color to start with. And I'm going to take the end of it and wedge it down under the end of the strap. And then I'm going to take another tail. Since we're using 3 colors, you have to start all 3 tails at the bottom. And I'm going to go the other way and put that tail under the strap as well. And then I'm going to take the orange and put it in the other direction. And then I'm going to take the 2 tails on this side, and I'm going to tie them together with the tail on the other side. And now I'm going to cover those up as I stitch. But I'm also going to be covering up 2 of the strands of yarn. Since the blue is on the right, I'm going to start with it, and I'm going to make the first few blanket stitches with the blue. And it has to be on the right side of the strap for this to work, or otherwise your stitches are going to come out on the wrong side. So to do this, I'm going to make sure that I'm carrying my red and my orange up the back of the strap, and I'm going to bring the blue across like this. And then I'm going to bring it under. I have a loop of yarn held in my hand. I'm going to bring it around the strap and through the loop. And so again, I'm going to hold on to this strand of yarn, bring the ball around the strap and through the loop, and tighten it just like that. And once you get up to where you can really work with it better, because if you're not in this little wedge down here, then you're going to want to make sure that all of the edges of your stitch line on this outside edge. They should line up and be even. I'm going to do about 8 blanket stitches in the blue. And you always want to tighten them up close to each other so that they're not loose or letting the yarn show. It's okay if the knot shows a little bit, just not the yarn. So there's 8 blanket stitches, and I've tightened them up against the previous ones. And I'm going to take a different color to make the next blanket stitch. So to switch colors, I have my orange on the right and my blue, which is still attached on the outside to the left. I'm going to switch them. And I'm going to put the blue over here with the red so that it gets encased in the back of the strap. And I'm going to work my blanket stitches now with the orange. And I'm going to work 8 of those as well. Now I'm going to switch to red again by taking the red and the orange and switching them so that the orange and the blue can be carried now. I can switch from working on the back side to working on the front side. So I'm going to take my yarns and rotate them, and now I'm going to switch back to orange. And it's the same process, but instead we're going to be doing it from a different direction. So now I'm going to hold the orange yarn like so, and then I'm going to bring it under the other yarns and around the tails and pull it through the front of the loop. So I'm taking my yarn behind the strap, under the yarn, and through the front of the loop. And that is how I'm working my blanket stitches from the outside instead of from the back. And it looks exactly the same, accomplishes the same thing, but it's just a little bit easier from doing it from the front. So I'm going to keep working blanket stitches in my pattern. I'm doing blue, orange, red, orange, blue. And I'm going to go all the way up to the toe piece. So I've got to the toe piece, and I'm going to try to work this out so that my pattern is continuous around the whole strap. So I have blue, orange, red, orange, blue, orange, red, orange, blue, and I stopped at the orange. So here's my blue, orange, red, orange, and then I'm going to put the blue in the middle around the toe piece. So I'm going to bring the blue over to the right side and put the orange over here with the red so it can be carried. And now I'm going to work 4 blanket stitches on this side of the toe piece and 4 on the other side, because I'm doing 8 for each stripe. Now I'm going to try to stretch this outside edge a little bit, pull it this way, and get it to come to the toe piece. So because this edge is shorter, so this edge we need to stretch it out a little bit to make it reach so that there's not a big gap. And you can even scoot your stitches around a little bit to make sure that your pattern is lined up with the toe piece so that it's centered. You can do any stripe pattern you like though. Okay, now I'm going to move these over a little bit so that they can get carried under this side, and then I'm going to work my blanket stitches around this side of the strap. And you are always going to have a little gap there in the middle, but it's pretty close to the same color as the strap, so it's not really going to show very much. So now I'm down to the end of my strap, and I tried to make the color pattern the same as on the other side, so that when it comes back together it's the same sequence and it matches up. So now I'm going to tighten everything a little bit with my fingers, and then I'm going to take the tails, cut them short, and I'm going to tie the blue, which is the last thing I used, together with the red and the orange. And now to make the blue come down as far as the blue on this side does, I'm going to try to slide my fingers along the strap and just scoot each stitch down a little ways and even it out so that both sides of the shoe match. And if you get any little gaps, you can just kind of smooth them out. But you want to be careful that you don't get too many of these little fuzzies that end up starting to show up, because this is cotton yarn, so you don't want to mess with it too much. And if you have some little fuzzies, you can just take your scissors and trim as they appear. And now I'm going to take the yarn needle, as always, and thread my tails up through underneath here to keep them inside so they're not sticking out when you're wearing the shoe.